Shut up and sit down.
Hi, today on Control Alt Delete, Kenny and I are joined by Susan. So Susan, who are you? Where are you? And yeah, we'll find out more about all of that in a minute. But where in the world are you and why are you there?
Okay, I'm Susan. The surname's equally as exciting, Brown. I'm in the very far north, just before you fall off the top, in a place called Dornoch.
Excellent, and a beautiful place it is too.
Absolutely, yeah.
How long have you been in Dornoch?
Some would say too long, but it's February 98. I came here.
Excellent.
I can't work that out. How many is that? That's a long time.
That's quite a long time. Yeah, that's like
years.
It's a long time.
22 years, yeah.
Yeah. Brilliant. So the whole point of this experiment in podcasting is to talk about church and lockdown, what happened, what was around and stuff. So we've tended to start the week before, just to get a sense of that kind of process where people moved into something different. So where were you, what is it, 8 weeks ago now, 7-8 weeks ago?
Yeah.
It's quite a long time, and it kind of, I think we need to stop asking the question because it's a long time ago now. I can't remember what I did yesterday. So
just don't ask me what I preached on, because that would be too much.
That's the second question. So, so were you at the cathedral that day and it was normal?
I mean, the week before we were beginning to get a bit news about stuff that was coming our way, possibly. In the Highlands, we tend to feel a wee bit like, it'll not come this far. But we understood that this one was going to come this far. So we had the service as usual on the Sunday morning, but on the Saturday I had this stupid idea that on the way into church, everybody would be given a piece of paper, and there would be several questions on the piece of paper along the lines of, could you telephone somebody to make sure they were okay? Would you like to be telephoned? Would you, so a whole lot of, could you do shopping for someone? Could you take someone's dog for a walk? Do you need your dog taken for a walk? Do you need shopping? And we created, even on just that one day, we managed to build up a wee kind of, just a wee bank of people that were available to do stuff. That then quickly evolved into the community council making contact, saying, you ask the congregation this, can we ask the community as a whole the same questions and see what we can come up with? And so that led to, in a community which is only 1,200, so it would be Dornoch and Embo and the outlying Croft, to something like 300 volunteers coming forward, which we managed to get community funding for, and some training in place, and we leafleted everybody and asked them what they might need, gave them a contact number. There is a group that started out as a kind of joint churches group called the Dornoch Firth group. And we employ what we used to call, and then stopped because the second person didn't like the title. We had a Highland Cow community outreach worker.
Excellent.
But he was an Irish guy and he thought it was hilarious. The lady who took over didn't quite find it quite so funny for some reason. Anyway, so we have a guy at the moment, and Charles was absolutely brilliant at sourcing funding and at drawing everybody together, and basically has coordinated this massive sort of support for the community. Plus, it's now led on into helping out with food for people who are self-isolating and also for families who are struggling. So it can't be called a food bank because we're not a food bank, but it is a kind of food store, community food store, and sourced bits and pieces from all over the place, which has been absolutely brilliant. So it's amazingly well, I should say. So that was all from handing out a wee piece of paper on the first Sunday before it really all happened.
That was very organised.
Yeah.
It was eerily so. It was a bit kind of spooky because it wasn't fully intentional. It was just we need to begin to think about this, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just went boom and took off.
Do you think part of that whole we need to begin to think about it rather than doing it was because traditionally the Highlands are a lot more isolated and you thought you maybe had a bit more time, and then it turns out actually what happened was exactly what you needed it to?
Exactly. That was it. I mean, we kind of tend to think we're behind the curve. Mm-hmm. So things that happen elsewhere, it'll be a while before it reaches us. This time round, not so. I mean, we needed to take immediate effect. Yep. And as I say, it just so happened everybody was able to come together. And the community council took over what we began, which is brilliant, along with the Dornoch Firth group. So it's been a fantastic concerted effort that's really worked.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
In terms of the worshipping life of the community, then what were you thinking about that? Kind of standing,
panic.
So
I can obviously do email. I can, I know some technical stuff, but I had never ever broadcasted a service of any sort on social media or any other platform. So that first week was quite an interesting. I think my hair got greyer very quickly. And I look back now, it's only 7 weeks ago, and I look back at the first effort and I think, oh my goodness, did
I do that?
Did I honestly think that
what did you do? What was that first effort?
The very first week, it was simply me sitting on the couch in the front room and just a 10-minute kind of thing that my other half filmed. But since then, we've worked out all sorts of stuff. I mean, I know that people actually really like seeing the inside of the church. And I know church is not about the building, but there is something comforting that signals a wee message. And while only one bit of the service now is inside the church, other bits are all over the place, that one bit gives it an anchor, I think, that people can immediately associate with. And then we can go and do anything you like, after that. But so stuff like learning how to edit films, what kind of program you needed to do that, working out like teleprompter coming up on your phone so that you can talk and not look as though you're reading, all that kind of stuff I had never had any experience of. So I bought myself a microphone. I got myself, my phone was due to be upgraded anyway, which was brilliant timing. So I got the new phone and it's amazing. All singing, all dancing. And a visitor left in the church about a year ago, a tripod. And so I didn't need to buy one of them to set up a tripod that some poor visitor has left and probably claimed on their insurance. So, So, and off we went.
So that's it. You're using a mobile phone, an external microphone, and a tripod. That's your kit.
And I'm also, the other great thing about it that we were beginning to think about doing, but it takes forever for the church to decide what it's going to do, even locally, involving people in the community that don't necessarily come to church. So, I've asked them to do various things, like for this coming Sunday, it's Ascension Day. Folks that don't normally come or whatever, I've asked them to send me photographs of them just looking up into the sky. Now, it can be hanging out their window, it can be lying on the back of the grass, it can be in the house, but looking up. And I think hopefully there will be quite a number of them that will phone send me. That's because the phone's ringing. Quite a number of them that will send me things in and pictures that we'll be able to use.
So is that's kind of progressed then, hasn't it? So you started off that first week sitting on the couch, and then some of the services, I think the first couple you did pretty much the whole service in the church.
Yep.
And then you've moved to bits and pieces, some in the church, some outside, but also starting to involve other people. So did you start by involving people in the church and then you've moved to people in the community?
I am trying to get the licenses was a big hassle for singing and hymns and all that because we didn't have them in place, so got that out of the way. and one of our congregation plays guitar pretty well and sings pretty well. So, but she wanted it filmed in the church as well because a nice big space, echo. The sound
The
is
acoustics would be
amazing.
great as well. Yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of it was focused inside the building, and then readers and things were all people from the congregation. And then 2 weeks ago, was it a week ago? I did the whole reading with 15 voices, and there were all ages and people involved in the church and not involved in the church, and everybody just said, "Oh, it's fantastic seeing people in the community and in the church all part of the service." And so we've been building on that just to see if there's other ways that we can use folk. I've used a young guy playing the piano that 1 week as well. He played and sang. He's brilliant. Doesn't normally come to church, although will come, the highs and the lows, the Christmas and funerals. But so it's been great to kind of tap into other people.
Yeah.
As I say, it was something we've been thinking about before, but we haven't actually got into gear.
Does some of that come about because you feel you've started to learn how to do it? So some of that's you being a bit more confidence with the editing, for example. So you can say to somebody, if you send me a video, I now know how to put that into the service.
And all they need to do, it's simple for them because all they need is just to film themselves and I'm giving them short bits and then knitting them all together. And it's doable and they feel as if they're a part of it, and they then pass it on out to other folks. "Oh, look, did you see? My YouTube debut."
Yeah, and it's been funny. I've kind of done some similar things. We got the Sunday school to say the Lord's Prayer and kind of cut it all together, and that was lovely. But it's funny how widely that circulates. I was at the school. We've got 2 primary schools in the village, and one of them's the hub. So I was over. We'd managed to get some funding to give them tablets, Kindle tablets for some of the kids that hadn't been able to access their schoolwork. So I was just dropping them off, and 3 of the teachers were there, and they're kind of saying, "Oh, you had us crying." And I said, "What are you talking about?" I said, "Oh, we watched the service the other day, and we saw all our kids because they haven't seen the children."
Yeah.
Kind of thing. So they'd watched that and felt really connected to some of the kids that they hadn't seen for a couple of months now. So the kind of almost unintended consequences of that are
There's one particular unintended consequence for Dornoch in that, we get a mass of folks from the States who are members of Royal Dornoch Golf Club.
Of course, yeah.
And on top of doing the Sunday service, I do a thought every morning, which goes up on Facebook and on my personal page, but on the cathedral pages as well. On the golf club, I've promoted it in their weekly newsletter throughout the world. And all these people are cluing in because there are pictures of the golf club, of the golf course as you walk down to the beach and things like that. And it's that's not why I'm doing it.
but it's an unintended consequence, yeah.
Folk are listening and appreciating it as well.
We had something really similar where I can't remember the exact link. We'll check with my minister this afternoon when we record his version of this. But it's a Presbyterian church in Baltimore, and they have a link to a family member or someone through the church, and we ended up using part of some of the worship that they'd used in our service. It was like their choir singing a song together and stuff.
Yeah.
And now we've got some really strong links with a church in Baltimore that would never have happened had this not happened. It's incredible where the church, not just in Scotland and not just in Dornoch and Motherwell and Stonehouse, is all starting to grow and link together a lot more than it was in the past. It's fantastic.
Well, one of our readers 1 week is a lady who lives in Ukraine. And I'd met her at the General Assembly, and we are talking about linking the two congregations 2 times. But it was great. I could say to Dora, "Can you film yourself saying this?" And then say to everybody, "This is Dora." And, the link has started because we're there. Unfortunately, I don't understand her husband's sermons, not a word.
So why did you choose? You said you were doing these daily recordings. So one of the things I was quite careful to do was not to overcommit immediately.
Exactly.
So
Wise man.
yeah. So you do that mostly first thing in the morning when you're out with the
Yeah.
dog, because they're always up before I even get up in the morning. So I'm always astonished. Susan's been up and been for her walk, and I'm just falling out my bed. So why those? Why not just the Sunday service? Why did you decide
Right.
to
Well,
do a daily?
on that Sunday before lockdown, somebody said on the way out the door to me, if things get really bad, will you make sure you do a reflection a day? Or was it a prayer a day or a reflection a day? And she said, and I went, like yourself, don't want to commit to that. And I'll say, well, we'll see what happens, but let's. And then immediately lockdown, she emailed me and said, so. And so you find yourself, and I kind of started going, well, it'll only be a few weeks. Thinking 2 or 3, 6, 7. Now it's 2 or 3 months. But it has actually, I mean, again, it's something that's proved to be attractive to people beyond the church, because it's. I try to keep it under 2 minutes, and that that's quite deliberate, because people will listen for that length and they won't for longer. So I'm getting lots of people who don't come to church in the community who are saying to me when I see them from a safe distance, "Oh, thanks for this morning, really liked it," or whatever. And then folks there was somebody contacted me from, was it North Carolina or something? No, Alabama yesterday, saying, "Oh, I love these wee daily reflections. Thanks so much." Somebody else from California that had been brought up in, her mother had been brought up in Embo, 3 miles away. Just said, "Oh, I love seeing Embo from the distance and the coastline, and you brighten up my day." A lady from Lausanne said this morning, if you look, the first comment there this morning said, "Thanks so much. This is a great way to start the day. It focuses me." So it's great. I mean, you have no idea the repercussions. You're getting on average about 700-800 people a day.
Wow.
Excellent.
I know, it's strange.
Isn't it?
It is.
And it's all through different sources as well. It's through the golf club. It's through,
and lots of people are sharing on, so you don't know where it's going, really.
Yeah.
So it's fine.
So, so part of the conversation, I suppose, that now happens is, so we're doing all this stuff online, and at some point in the future, who knows when, you'll get to go back to church and have a proper service with people, and we'll all be there. So do you keep doing all this stuff or not?
I don't think you can stop. But it's how we do church. I mean, the interesting thought that comes up with me is that actually Sunday morning is not a good time. I've thought that before, and I've kind of said Sundays are not quite on their way out, but it's not the best time of day. So I think the challenge going on will be, perhaps there will be a Sunday for those who are committed, but perhaps a lot more of our work will be about doing stuff on other days of the week that is about something, a different way of worshipping, a different way of sharing the gospel message, a different way of involving people in thinking about things what matter.
Does that have? So I'm thinking, you Dornoch's not a big place.
No.
It's a kind of reasonable sized town, but it's it's not huge. It's, what did you say, 1,200 or so?
100 in the parish, yeah.
Well, so, and I'm in a slightly bigger town, so we've got 6,000, I think, folk in Stonehouse, but it still feels like a small town. It's not a big place. And so one of the questions that we continually come up against is, if you do too many things, it's the same people that come to everything, or but one of the interesting things about being online is it's not the same people that are coming to
exactly.
everything.
Yeah.
We're definitely seeing different people engaging with the worship. They have never been to church or only come, as you said, for high days and the occasional funeral or something like that. So, does the internet give you then a kind of a pool of people that makes that sustainable, rather than, because you're in a small community, there's only so many people to come to anything that you do. Does doing it online then add, a kind of sense of, well, if we do this, there might be 5 or 6 people from Dornoch come, but there might also be 5 or 6 people from Alabama or Lausanne or Ukraine, and that's a very different kind of ministry, isn't it? That kind of moves beyond the parish kind of model a little bit.
It certainly does. I mean, it is very, very different. I think what's still missing, there is something about the physicality of meeting together.
Yeah.
And I think what the social media stuff does is offers a safe way in, where you can sit on the edges and be a part of it without being visibly a part of it. And it gives you the chance to explore the possibility of faith and explore faith questions and explore a spiritual dimension to your life. But there comes a point at which I think, and we're too early into the process, but I think there must come a point, there has to come a point at which somebody moves from the edges to actually wanting to say, that's me now. And how we manage that when it comes is going to be an interesting one.
Yeah, I've been reading some stuff about what we don't want to do is create more consumers. There's enough of them in the world. What we want to do is promote engagement. And that's a really difficult thing to do, isn't it?
I mean, it's relatively easy. It's not easy, but it's relatively easy to get folk clicking in and saying hi. And, like we've got the phone line as well, like you have, and you can, because you get the graph of the statistics, you can see not just the numbers of those who call, don't tell people, but you can just have, but you can get how long they listen for out of the total time. And then you can look back and you get your stats for the week, how many phone calls were there? Well, 67 phone calls, and the average listening time was
3 seconds. It doesn't get past the automated bit at the beginning that says, hi, welcome to Dornoch
Cathedral. So it's easy to get the folks on the edges. It's the move in then. What do we do? Like we've kind of like put them, they're on the end of the line, but what is it that's going to feed them, to draw them to keep coming?
So we need to start thinking about, what does discipleship look like online?
Virtually. Yeah.
I can't remember where I saw it. Someone was talking about how it's a great opportunity for people who wouldn't necessarily want to come for a full church service to dip in and out.
Yeah.
So like, if you put the full church service online, and I've seen a couple folks doing like an hour and a half, and I think, right, okay, fair enough, if that's what your congregation's needs are, but it still gives people the opportunity to say, actually, I just want to hang about for 20 minutes. I want to hear 20 minutes of a sermon and that's it. Or I want to hear 5 minutes of a reflection or 2 minutes of a reflection. But it's giving everybody the opportunity to A, explore, B, search a little bit more as well, think a little bit more, and hopefully feel blessed by what it is that they're getting from people and getting from God as a result of all the stuff that's going on just now. But like you said, it's what happens next. That's kind of what we're talking about with this whole podcast as well, is the church has reset itself. And we've been saying it's been needing to do that for 30 years. And now it's forced to, which, and it's only taken a global pandemic to get the Church of Scotland to do something, which is fantastic. But,
that's fast for us.
Well, was it Scott Burton last week, Stuart, the other day said, one of his books said that every 500 years or something, the church has to go through this to stay relevant and to stay and it's, I think, it was the last time this happened, you could maybe say, was the Reformation, And
we have morning prayers on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and now we do it on Zoom. So, and that's brilliant. So same people come, which is interesting. That's one of the only things that not new people have come to. Anyway, we were talking about Acts 1 this morning because that's one of the readings for Sunday. And I was sitting with my Bible and it had a map on the first page. So it's kind of, obviously to show you when it gets to chapter 2, where all these people came from that Peter ends up talking to. So you're looking at basically the Roman Empire round about the Mediterranean. And it struck me today that one of the reasons that Christianity spread, and it's not a new thought, it just struck me when I was looking at the map, was that we started to have that conversation, what have the Romans ever done for us? The kind of the joke. One of the reasons that Christianity spread is that it was easy to travel around the empire. The technology of the day made it so that those disciples could go other places in a way that they probably couldn't have done 100 years earlier. The ships, the moving around an empire that had a common language, all that kind of stuff makes for a good condition for an idea to spread. And then 400 odd years ago, you get Gutenberg inventing a printing press at the same time as the Reformation happened. So again, an idea, the conditions for an idea to spread are right for that time. And I wonder, we've talked before with people that we've spoken to that even 5 or 6 or 7 years ago, if this had happened then, we wouldn't be having this conversation because the technology didn't really exist. It was sort of around, but it wasn't at the state where everybody could download Zoom and go to church on a Sunday morning if they wanted to. So perhaps Kenny's right. Maybe this is our point where the technology now exists that church can be different without it being too difficult. Because that was always the problem. You were saying that we've been thinking about going online and maybe live streaming services, and we've been having the same conversation for ages. But the technology involved in kitting out your church to do that is still quite expensive. Mm-hmm. We spoke to Shuna. Her interview will appear shortly, but they just spent £14,000 kitting out the church so that they could live stream, putting in camera points and computers and microphones and all that kind of stuff. And yet here we are, you and I, using a mobile phone, a microphone that you can plug into the side of it, and a tripod that somebody left in the church. and basically creating a television program every week from those, really simple tools now that, even you and I can learn how to edit video, because all you have to do is drop in a bit and then drop in another bit, and at the end of it, press spit that out as one thing, please. And it,
no, I have to make wee transitions and everything.
Obviously. And add in your title music and all that, but it's all just drag and drop now. You don't have to understand how it works, really. You don't need to know how to code. We don't have dial-up internet.
Exactly.
All that kind of stuff that's just made it. 10 years ago, we'd be lucky if we had the capacity to print off and deliver some services. So the technology makes a huge difference in what we're able to do, I think.
Yeah, although I have to say there is a percentage of our population that are just not online. Yeah. And that was the harder point, actually, was trying to find a way of helping them to feel connected.
Yeah.
And the telephone line does that, but that was longer in getting up. It was far easier to set up, and it wasn't easy, but it was far easier to set up the online stuff.
Yeah.
Trying to set up that flipping Twilio was.
Remembering to change the file every week.
5 hours of my life I'll never get back. But then once it's there, it's there. And again, I'm assuming that will continue, because that means that the folks who are housebound, they will have the Sunday service.
So that's been a thing that a couple of people have brought up, that all of a sudden, people that we haven't been very good, perhaps, at including are now included. So people that just couldn't come to church for whatever reason, and
and we just kind of went, well, that's a shame.
Yeah. And we maybe
here's the
we'll
newsletter
visit them.
every now and
Yeah,
then.
here's a newsletter, and we'll maybe visit you, and occasionally we'll,
Here's
we
a
might have
quarterly
one
magazine that
or-
tells you what we've done, but not what we're going to do for you, kind of thing. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, but all of a sudden there are ways that those folk can join in, which is brilliant. But kind of shame on us for not having that thought until. And I suppose that's sometimes what happens, isn't it? Is it's not until you have to do something for everybody that you realise that people have been excluded and how badly they've been excluded.
Mm-hmm. Yep, definitely. And I'm thinking too of using other musicians. I mean, our organist is great, and he's a fantastic pianist as well, which is, super real, and he's very laid back. He doesn't need his hymns, 3 weeks in advance. So he's fine, he's really good fun. But using, we have one kid learning the clarinet, we have a couple of kids playing the fiddle, we have a bagpiper, we're involving David on the piano, involving these other people. It's just great. And
that's not necessarily something you would have done on a Sunday morning, because we just fall into that, fall out the door into the pulpit, the organist's there, let's go, and we're all
playing bagpipes in the middle of Dornoch Cathedral for Amazing Grace might be a bit of a challenge as well.
Yeah.
But,
no bother, we've done it.
Well, there you go, perfect.
But isn't it amazing how all of a sudden, more people are involved in leading worship than probably would be normally in a Sunday morning. And I always think we're quite good at it. There's always somebody does the reading and the prayers of intercession, so there's always at least 3 voices in our service. And for a while, the children were doing the call to worship and the first prayer, because they asked if they could. So we would have maybe 5 or 6 voices in a service, but now last week we had 10. In a much shorter time as well, so in a kind of 17, 18 minute service, there are 10 or 12 voices, because we can, and we don't have to conform to this pattern that we've kind of set for ourselves and are terrified to change, because people might not like it.
Or we'll get it in the neck if we do change it, because that is also true. It's not just our own personal prejudices.
Did you, when you said earlier that it was important for people to see the church, so it was one of the thoughts, aside from that being a comforting thing, one of the kind of conversations that we've had around about what kinds of things people are doing, one of the thoughts that folk have had is that it would be, if we do something really, really different, then that doesn't help people to come to church once they can.
Well, that's true.
If you do something in the church, then people see the church. You come back in, and what you do on a Sunday morning isn't that far removed from what you've been doing online, and so the transition's not such a difficult one. Whereas I recorded the first week in the church, and I think maybe the second week, and every other week I've been sitting in the living room.
Right.
And it's not wildly different. There's still a reading, a sermonish, and a prayer, but it doesn't look like what it would look like in church. So it might be a bit more difficult for folk who've engaged in that to then walk into a church with pews and stained glass windows, and it doesn't look like my living room at all, and find me standing in a pulpit with a dog collar on, kind of thing, as opposed to sitting in my living room with my, wearing this.
Yeah.
Do you think that's going to be an issue?
I'd like to say no, but I think
Okay.
And I do think it is quite good to help folk to get across that doorstep. But I don't think a Sunday morning service is going to do it.
Yeah. In its current context or current guise anyway.
Yeah.
So one of the things video allows is for people to join any time during the week. So if you're working shifts, or you've got small kids that need fed or changed or are asleep, or might be doing all of those things at the same time at 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning, then coming to church just isn't. It's not an option.
It's not a possibility. Yeah.
And we need to be realistic about that. And I think that sometimes the other thing we forget is that the people who come are people who broadly like it. It's a self-selecting group.
Yeah.
You know, so they're okay with it. So they're not going to make an awful little noise about changing it and it being more inclusive or accepting, or, you know, more people being involved in it, you know, because it is what it is, and, you know, they're okay with that. And the people that don't come aren't going to say anything because they don't come.
Yeah, and, you know, what can they say?
Why dick there? Yeah. It's just
I mean, I'm a great fan of trying to get folk inside the door for any reason, you know, like, I mean, we have community carols at Christmas, and folk will come to that, they never come inside the church any other time. That's quite good. And I suppose in that vein, for Pentecost, although we're all having a kind of united service for Pentecost, or supposed to be for the Church of Scotland, I have actually been thinking of it, and I've just had coffee and chat with some colleagues up from the far north, and I was saying to them, my plan is today that I'm going to put out on Facebook a whole a set of instructions as to how to make, you know, these pinwheels that the wind blows round, and the idea being that if we get folks of all ages to make them, and you don't need, you know, they don't need to be posh, you can use the pages of a magazine to make them colourful, pin them to I don't know, a skewer, a wooden skewer or something, or a lollipop stick or whatever, and stick them in the grass all round the front door of the church on the Saturday, and hang them from the tree. Well, there's a couple of trees there they could hang them from, and see if we can flood the place in pinwheels for Pentecost Sunday. And again, the hope there is that you're actually getting somebody to feel that that place is theirs because they've contributed something to it. Yeah. I don't know if it'll work or what. Watch this space.
Yeah, that was going to be my question. My next kind of question. I've been to Dornoch once to play the golf courses, but I'm not entirely sure of the context of where the cathedral is in the town. Is it kind of fairly central? Is it on?
You drove past it.
Right. Well, there you go then.
It's on the one street.
It was about 10 years ago, so it's been a while. But like,
it's only been there 800.
But
there's one main street goes through, and it's right on the main street with a little green in front of it. It's absolutely. I mean, our phrase is Dornoch Cathedral at the heart of the community, with the community at its heart.
Yeah. So you're obviously talking about using the building as an outreach system. So have you got any other plans for that? So for example, like we at my church now, this is where it gets slightly complicated. I live in Newton Mearns, but I go to worship in Motherwell because that's where I grew up, and that's where my wife and I felt called to when we get married and stuff. And I'm an elder there and all that sort of stuff. But we built a new church. I've forgotten how many years ago it was now, 4 or 5 years ago now, and we've got this garden that kind of goes along the side of the pavement, and we've been putting prayer posts up with messages on them. And from what we've there's members of the community that are kind of deliberately taking that path through the garden and reading the prayer posts, and the windows that face out, the children have been putting messages on, and we had Easter pictures and all sorts of different things. And so we've been using the building as a source of comfort and outreach for the community, even though they're not allowed in it.
Yeah.
You know, and like my mum's a property convener, lives around the corner, so she's in most days just keeping an eye on things and checking the upkeep of the building. And our worship convener goes in at a separate time and changes the displays and things. So have you got any more plans for the building and how you could maybe use that to help the community and give them, I don't know, you know, a wee, for want of a better expression, a boost?
Yeah, I mean, we're extremely fortunate. We have the cathedral's in the middle of the town, and then the hall, which was another denomination of the church, it was the United Presbyterian Church, is about half a mile away from it. And that's where all the hall is and the hall activities are, and that's incredibly busy. But the cathedral is open every day, and we have always encouraged, we have like a prayer tree and things like that. So, you know, that's kind of routine. Mm-hmm. Then we also, the town hosts a fibre fest. And now that's not good roughage for your breakfast. It's all sorts of sewing and knitting and, you know, embroidery and all that kind of thing. And they hold a massive display in the cathedral and workshops throughout the town in all the halls. to encourage folk to craft and make things. We have concerts. We're fortunate in that it's a big space in a small town. So it is quite often used. And we just love it when it is used because, everything is still there as it would be. And the message of the building is very much still there.
Yeah.
So we have plans to continue to make sure that it's used positively. Yeah.
Do you have plans? We spoke very briefly about this kind of idea of online discipleship. So one of the things that I almost killed myself trying to do was to do everything that we had planned but online, including Holy Week and all that kind of stuff. So we had
Holy Week. That was quite a challenge.
Yeah, that was good fun. Yeah, you can tell us about that in just a second. But we've had to go a Bible study and Cafe Church, and with like an online quiz and stuff like that. So, what about those kinds of things? Have you thought about doing them, or have you had a go?
We should have had. We were heading to a discipleship kind of thing, and I just didn't. I haven't done it online, mainly because of the confidence thing. I didn't know if I could host it properly, adequately online. But I mean, now because we've got used to doing other stuff, and because of things like this and meetings on Zoom and Teams as well. The possibilities are definitely there. And again, it gives people the chance to be more comfortable in that they are where they are in their own home. And they're contributing, they're chipping in, but it's kind of safer. I don't know if that sounds a bit strange, but...
Yeah, I kind of wonder if, because, as you said, you're at home, but at the end of it, you just turn it off and you're still at home. You don't have to justify yourself to anybody. You don't have to have that awkward car park conversation or, any of that kind of stuff. And I think that there is maybe a kind of culture about people feeling confident about saying things that they might not say in real life. They would be able to say it online.
Yeah.
Posting on forums and all that kind of stuff. People, there's a bit of anonymity, and even in this, I think sometimes you're talking to a screen, and there are people on your screen, but you're talking to a screen. They're not in the room. They're not going to get up and disagree with you or punch you in the face if you say something. So there is a kind of barrier and a kind of sense of safety, maybe, that there isn't. And
it's much easier
to the church hall and
And the coffee and chat stuff is okay.
Yeah.
It's actually it's quite fun. You can get quite a number of people on the screen and you're all sitting having a coffee. It's a wee bit false in that you're trying to keep everybody in the conversation.
Yeah.
And there can be kind of pauses where you're going, what the heck am I going to ask next? Or who hasn't spoken? So it is a bit unreal. And will it ever replace physically meeting for a coffee? No. But it has got its uses as well. So, yeah.
Kenny spoke earlier about, it's taken us 400 years in a pandemic to change. One of the things that the Church of Scotland challenged every congregation to do was to set up a fresh expression by the end of this year.
I've done it.
Thanks, coronavirus. So in some senses, in the middle of this awful thing, it's awful. It's a horrendous experience for lots of people. But at the same time, it's brought a burst of creativity, some new energy around lots of different things. Maybe helped some communities to connect together in ways that they haven't before. So, what's been positive in this?
I would definitely say the working with the community, in the setting up of the community support group, absolutely brilliant. That we were at the heart of it. So fantastic to be able to do that. And I think the other real bonus was that the elders stepped up to the mark, and they have, every one of them have phoned all of those in their district every week, which is phenomenal. I mean, it's just fantastic. And where you fall through the cracks is, I don't know about your congregation, we get a lot of people who aren't actually members who come along, and so they don't have that. People keep asking you, what's the benefit of being a member? And normally you kind of sheepishly say, well, you get to vote.
Once every 23 years.
26 for the last one. So.
Oh, there you go. So you don't even get to do that often. Yeah, but you're right. We haven't. Churches haven't been good at even keeping up to date information on folk. That's one of the things we found. It's like, whose phone number do we actually have?
Yeah. Well, that was a big thing. Yeah. And it is, and especially because like when I had my year away, they sold the manse and built us a new one. And so you come in and come into a new house, and I'm thinking, I don't even have a telephone directory.
Of course.
Yeah.
Because so that was quite interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, you don't really get one of them anymore, do you?
You do, no. But anyway, yeah. So.
Yeah.
Physical challenge.
Yeah.
But I've enjoyed the new contacts. I think that's been brilliant. And they have actually, they've spoken, lots of them. There are a lot more kind of lurking in the back, because you get a wee note every now and then that'll say, I've been following you ever since whatever. And which is really lovely.
Not stalkery at all.
Not stalking, no.
I know who you are and where you live.
Well, they don't know where I live. It's a new house.
Okay. Well, so being in Dornoch, some folk will know exactly where that is. It's an incredibly beautiful part of the world, but it's also very far away from almost everything else.
Yeah.
So in a time like this, where I live 10 minutes from 4 massive supermarkets. How has that been in terms of both just living in a place that's kind of fairly remote, but also so for me, I've had several funerals. So where's the nearest crematorium to Dornoch?
Yeah, okay, right. Dornoch is up on the east coast, and if you think of the shape of Scotland as like a poodle's head with a nose to the right, aye? Yep. So we're where the eyes are, which is an hour north of Inverness. And so the nearest crematorium is the far side of Inverness, out the Fort William Road, which is a long way away.
Yeah.
We get a fair number of cremations, but most people are buried up here, simply because the burial grounds are more immediate and easier to hand. The practicalities of doing funerals in this have been really quite interesting, because part of the crofting communities, and I think it's just a crofting thing, is that you get your sleeves rolled up and you just get on with it. It's not going to hit you. And I know I've got a big funeral at the end of this week, and it will be big. Mm-hmm. Everybody else is told, don't have a big funeral, don't do it. And you can say to the family all you like, a dozen, 20 maybe, that would be great. But it's up at the croft, it's in the open air. Mm. And they're actually related to half of that one area of Dornoch. And I think they're all going to turn up. And once you're there, you can't then say, go away. So you're left with what will be, I would imagine there will be at least 30, 40, 50 people there.
Yeah.
And part of you wants to say, no, a large part of me wants to say, get real. Make sure you've all got masks on. Make sure you're, keeping your distance. Will it happen? Watch this space again. But last week we had another funeral, and what was really lovely about that one was folk just lined the street, as a certain Mr. Cutler suggested a few weeks ago. And that was really quite dignified. And we did have a piper, but he stayed well away. Because the guy played in the pipe band, so it's really hard not to have a piper. Mm-hmm. But again, just a small number around the grave, which was easy, But I don't know how you found things, Stuart.
Much the same, I think. Obviously because we're fairly well served with crematoria, so there's 3 that people use around here, and they're all very different, and they've approached the whole thing very differently. So we have one that's in South Lanarkshire at Blantyre, and they've taken out most of the seats, and so the seats are all separate, and it feels a bit odd. Whereas the creme at Hollowtown is privately owned. It's one of the big chains that own it, and so they've left in all the seats but said to people, don't sit together. And then Daldowies in Glasgow City Council, so it's a different local authority, but it's a very old creme, so it's got pews, and again, so they've just roped off the kind of pews. But I suppose the thing that's been interesting is that for me, almost always a graveside has been what feels like a more satisfactory way to say goodbye to somebody. In this kind of current climate, the creme has been okay mostly, but I think because of things like being able to have a piper, or being able to folk being able to come out in the village to see the hearse pass, things like that, where that tends not to happen if you're going to the creme, because folk aren't leaving from the house, they're leaving from the parlour and Lark Hall, and just following the hearse down the motorway kind of thing. So it's a strange, and obviously making arrangements by telephone or by video is much more difficult. That people, particularly in those kind of situations, they, it's much easier and much more comforting, I suppose, to be there in person and to be able to see people's body language and to give them space, and you can't see any of that on the telephone, so you just talk, and people feel they have to keep talking even if they're upset, or because you're on the phone and it's people's time, and there's a whole load of stuff that comes in.
I tried a funeral visit on Sunday night by Zoom with this one for the weekend, and there were about 15 of them packed into a room, which meant you couldn't hear anything really, and you couldn't see what was going on because the camera was too far back to try and get everybody in, and you're just going, actually, I'm not sure how much good this is doing.
Yeah, it has. I've had a few arrangements where I've only spoken to one person in the family, and I've had others where I've spoken to a number of people in the family, and that's just been interesting. Neither was better or worse, but it's been interesting to see, have different conversations with people that you might not have had if they'd all been together, because they wouldn't have had the same amount of time to contribute, or might not have wanted to contribute because somebody else was there, or all the kind of dynamics that you get in any kind of group. And I think the other thing that's been interesting is, as we've gone on, people's expectations of what may or may not be able to happen has changed. So people have heard, we can only have 10 people.
Yeah.
Or people have heard that, we can't have a big long service at the graveside, and kind of say, well, we can do what you want to do at the graveside. If you want to have a eulogy, we can have a eulogy. We can have a reading. We can have a reflection on that. We can do all the things that we would normally do in church, and just hope it's not going to be raining. And if it is, then we'll get wet. And that's okay. We can still do all of those things, or we can offer. I'm doing one tomorrow where most of the family can't come because of geography or ill health or whatever. So I'm going to record a service in the church and give them the video. So there are things that we can do that I think people are. Are
you going to be in the church on your own, or?
Yeah.
Oh, right.
Because it's a burial. So yeah, I'll just go to the church and record what would have been the funeral,
Yeah.
and the way that it would have been, and give them the video file, and they can have that, and they can send it to the people that can't come. Because it's not, I sit in my tripod in the graveyard doesn't feel quite right. But most of the crematoria here are live streaming as well, which is the other kind of option for folk that they can join in.
Well, the Inverness crematorium, the last time I was there 2 weeks ago, the undertakers took an iPad with them, and it reacted with a microphone the whole time. It was like fighting against, the greatest thunderstorm in history, trying to speak above. And the guys were not competent enough to know what button to press to shut it up. But apparently it wasn't their fault. Anyway, somebody had logged in several things, like a phone or whatever, in the one room. And it was what was feeding back rather than what we were doing at the other end. Yeah. So, great fun.
It's the technology again, isn't it? Trying to kind of crack this stuff that we're not used to using in particular circumstances. And just try to get your head around what you can do with it and what's okay, and what might not be okay. We've been recording every week, and on Sunday we decided that we were having communion. It was supposed to be the week before, but it was this week, and we would do that on Zoom, and obviously Zoom died on Sunday morning.
Oh, it did, yes.
So half the people that were coming couldn't get on. So I was incredibly grateful that I had thought, do you know what? I'm just going to video this anyway and put it up, because there'll be people that can't join us. So, I want them still to be able to take part. So half the congregation ended up on Facebook or YouTube, and we had I think 10 people managed to get onto Zoom, which was fine. But, you kind of think, if I had been relying on that was it, then sometimes the technology just doesn't work.
Did somebody not post a backup?
Yeah. Yeah. But you wouldn't do that on a Sunday.
No, you wouldn't, no. But did you not say there was some other, on Minister's discussion, did you not say there was another? Yeah,
so we ended up, we have Sunday school on Sunday morning at 11 o'clock, because that's when Sunday school is. And it's great. And we found, much like church, more people are coming, and more regularly than they ever did in real life. So on Sunday it was on Zoom, so it just didn't work. So we ended up...
we were the same. We've had to reschedule to next week.
Yeah, well, one of the dads just sent a message. We've got a wee Facebook group for the parents, and said, we've been using Google Meet. It's free. I'll set up a meeting, and posted the link, and so we had Sunday school on Google Meet instead.
Oh, great.
We kind of started 10 minutes late, and it was all fine. But yeah, there's that kind of, what will we do if... we can all go and watch Reflections at the Quay and see who's on this.
All slightly behind each other so that you can,
Yeah. It's all fine. But sometimes it's not going to work, and that's just going to have to be okay.
Yeah.
Or sometimes your dog's going to bark in the background throughout the whole recording.
Yeah, that's just what happens. Working at home, though, that's, it's real.
It is. And it's managed to open one eye of my black lab who's asleep.
Am I right in saying, Susan, that you and I have another thing in common, that we're both married to hospital chaplains?
We are indeed, yeah. Aye.
Has that been an interesting experience as part of this?
It really has, yeah. I mean, to the routine of life, it's brought a sense of normality, because he just goes up and down every day to Rigmore, which again is an hour drive away, an hour back. And at the beginning, it was a journey that was incredibly quick, because nobody else was on the road. But of course, now it's kind of got a bit slower again. The process of helping staff come to terms with things has been quite interesting, because they've been under considerable strain. And some of them have seen things that have been quite hard to see.
Yeah.
And I think for people particularly in the nursing profession, not to be able to help when they want to help, because they don't have the proper gear right then, is actually pretty difficult for them. And it's possibly going to have repercussions for a long time to come. I'm not sure, who's beginning to think through these things, but they seriously need it. But you'll know that, Stuart.
Yeah, I think we've had a kind of similar sort of experience in that kind of impending, that at some point, folk are going to have some issues with that. That it's, what Avril had spoken about, sleep patterns and things like that. Nurses talking about not being able to get to sleep, and when they do get to sleep, they're having terrible dreams. As you would expect. It's a traumatic experience that they've gone through, and I kind of think, some of those nurses are our community. They're our parishioners. They're folk that come to our churches. They're folk that live next door, and there's going to be, I think, a really vital role for the church going forward and helping folk. Both people, we've just talked about bereavement, people who have had difficulties around about that process, that they've not been able to call on the support of their friends and neighbours that in a way that they would, but also people who've been kind of right on the front line of this that are going to have to get some help, I think, from all kinds of places to kind of work out some of that.
I suppose on the positive side, if I could be, the amount of contact with staff is so much greater because there aren't as many routine patients in. So there's more time to spend with staff. And the staff have also been asking for bereavement support. How to talk with families, how to support people through, and not just their own bereavement support, but supporting other people. And so, he's had classes every other day, I think, with various nurses off the shift or on shift coming down to participate in. Yeah,
that's brilliant. And all of a sudden, spiritual care's become really important.
Yeah.
Yep.
In a way that it maybe wasn't even 2 months ago.
I think Jason Leach has helped that. Virtually every time he's spoken, he's mentioned spiritual care and the work of chaplains.
Yeah.
No, absolutely.
It's been really positive.
Aye, yeah. And I think, the NHS Highland at one point was saying, we'll set up counsellors to talk to people and things like that. Folk are going, we're not wanting a counsellor. We are not wanting this marked down as an illness we're having. We're just wanting somebody to speak to. We'd rather go to the chaplain, thank you. Which is absolutely brilliant, because that's what the chaplains are there for.
I think it sort of highlights as well that there always feels like there's a need to solve something. When you start to say, like, you need a counsellor because you've got a problem. No, they just need someone to talk to and have a cup of coffee with, and be able to get away from where they are and just talk through their thought. Yes, that's what counsellors do as well, but it's not. It doesn't need to be a
condition.
Exactly. Yeah, absolutely. And even when Christine, again going back to this, my wife was in hospital with not with coronavirus, but with another problem recently, and I noticed in one of the buildings across from the Queen Elizabeth in Glasgow, they had like a staff wellness centre. And it was just a place, and staff were coming out the main entrance together and going across there and being able to leave. I think it was just that the force of the nature of going from the place where it was all happening and going to somewhere that it wasn't. And also being able to sit in a comfy chair and have a cup of coffee that's made for you and just relax and talk to your chaplain, talk to your colleagues, talk to these people who on a ward you're communicating with through PPE. And it's not the same as human interaction, and I think it's very, very important to make sure that that's something that continues, because it's maybe it's something that doctors and nurses have been asking for a long time. And again, it's taken a pandemic for people to realise just what key workers and consultants and nurses and healthcare assistants and the porters and all of these people do on a daily basis, to realise actually they need a lot more than we think they do, and the church can be a definitive part of that moving forward. It's great. It's fantastic.
Go in the door stuff.
Brilliant. That's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much, Susan, for giving us
your time. Invitation.
You're very, very welcome.
Absolutely.
It's been great. Thank you.
Shut up and sit down.